Good morning, guys. So we are starting with a new chapter. This is chapter number 34. Okay, after this we are left with 35, 36 and 38. Those three are short chapters. Each will require 2 classes only. But this will be slightly larger. That's why I wanted a special class. How did this concept come? Let me first explain that. So the first thing is, you have studied in a previous chapter that if you have a current loop, you studied in a previous chapter that if you have a current loop and if this current loop is placed in a uniform magnetic field, if it is placed in a uniform magnetic field, you found that the net force on it was 0, but then there was a torque. There was a torque acting on the loop, okay, in such a way that the torque was trying to align the area vector parallel to the B vector. If I is the current, you have seen that the torque is I A cross B, where A is the area vector. Okay, so this you have studied in chapter number 32. I want you to recall this. So now that set scientists into asking a question. If I have a current loop and I am going to put it in a uniform magnetic field, it is going to turn. Okay, so now if I take a loop, and then keep it in a uniform magnetic field, I'll just draw a figure for that. I have a uniform magnetic field once again, and I'm going to take a loop but no current. I'm going to take a loop, but then this loop is not going to have any current. If I take a loop like this, and then if I'm going to turn it in a magnetic field, I'm just going to turn it in a magnetic field by applying a torque. In the first case, the torque is a consequence. The torque is a consequence. It happened because a current carrying loop was in a magnetic field. But in the second case, you don't have a current in the loop. You're just taking a loop. You're putting it in a uniform magnetic field B, and then you're going to apply a torque and turn it. If you apply a torque and turn it, will there be a current? Will there be a current is the question. So in the first case, current is already there. You put it in a uniform magnetic field, the loop turns. There is a torque produced. But in the second case, they want to know whether the reverse is true. If you take simply a loop and put it in a uniform magnetic field and turn the loop, will there be a current produced? So this set people into thinking. And here you have to credit Faraday with 2 of his experiments. They are famously known as the Faraday's experiment number 1 and 2. So let's quickly see Faraday's experiment number 1. In chapter number 29, you have seen that in a wire or in a circuit, if you have to see a current, you need a source of EMF. You need a driving force. And the driving force could be produced by a battery or a current source or a voltage source. Basically, you are trying to produce a potential difference between any 2 points so that there is a flow of charge and there is a current. So you know that a precursor for a current in a loop is a source of EMF. Okay, that I want you to remember. So now let's see what this first experiment is going to be. So here you see is a loop. Here is a loop. Okay, this entire thing is a loop, and you can see that there is no source of EMF. This doesn't have any source of EMF, no battery, no voltage source, no current source. But there is an ammeter connected, and you know what is an ammeter for? An ammeter is to measure currents. Okay, and what is done is this part of the circuit, the loop is held vertical. The loop is held vertical like this, and then what is done is a person is getting a bar magnet. Look at the polarity. North is facing the loop. The north is facing the loop. And then, so let's say this is the loop. North is facing the loop. And then somebody is moving this magnetic field with a velocity V towards the loop. He's moving it with a velocity V towards the loop. And when he does this, okay, there is a momentary deflection in the ammeter. There is a momentary deflection in the ammeter when he moves it. An ammeter deflecting means there is a small current, a momentary current that is appearing. And remember, there is no source of EMF. So this is the first thing that is observed. The second is when he moves it faster, when the magnet is moved faster, he finds that the deflection is large, the ammeter deflection is large, or in other words, there is a larger current that you are applying. So that means the velocity of the motion has got something to do with the current. The third thing that he is observing is the direction of the deflection reverses with the direction in polarity of the moving magnet. That is, instead of north, if he kept south like this and then moved it, he finds that yes, there is a deflection, but in this case, the deflection is going to be in the opposite direction. That's a third observation. And what is the fourth observation? The fourth observation is that the direction of the deflection is going to reverse when the see, first he is moving the magnet like this and seeing a deflection. Next, he is going to pull it out with the same speed. When he is able to take it out with the same speed, he finds it again, there is a deflection, and the deflection now is in the opposite direction. Okay, and finally, one thing that is noticed is that deflection is there only when there is a relative motion between your bar magnet and the loop. If you hold it at rest, even inside the loop, there is no current. There is no current. Okay, so that means he is observing that even without a source of EMF, there is a momentary current which is happening simply because of the relative motion between the bar magnet and the loop. And next thing is the polarity of the magnet also matters. Polarity means the direction of the magnetic field. Please remember, your bar magnet is a source of magnetic field. So the direction of the magnetic field is from the north to the south. Okay, so that means the direction of the magnetic field also matters. Next thing is he's finding that the direction of the velocity also matters, and the magnitude of the velocity also matters. So these are all the observations from experiment number 1. I hope all this is clear to you. Is it clear, guys?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So now whatever I've discussed has been shown in the form of a picture here. Okay, so here is the loop. There is the ammeter connected. So with the north ahead, the person is getting it inside. He's moving it in this direction. He sees a deflection to the right. When he holds it at rest, there is no deflection. When he pulls it back in the reverse direction, he sees a deflection in the opposite direction. So this picture actually summarizes most of what we have seen in the previous slide. So now let's go to experiment number 2. Let's go to experiment number 2. In experiment number 2, now we'll do one thing. We'll call this first loop, the loop which was there in your first experiment, we will call it loop 1. Okay? And now you're seeing that instead of a bar magnet, now there is a loop 2. Instead of bar magnet, there is a loop 2 that is being used. And this loop 2 is having a source of EMF. The loop 2 has a source of EMF. That's what you're seeing here. It has got a source of EMF. So seeing a current in that loop 2 is not surprising. It will be there. It will be there if you close this key yes. Every time you close this key yes, you're going to see a current in the loop 2. Not at all surprising. And in the second experiment, there is going to be no relative motion between the two loops. The distance between the two loops is kept fixed. No motion is going to be there. Okay, and here, what are the observations? Let us see. Again, you're finding that.
Excuse me,
Yeah?
ma'am. Some students are waiting outside, ma'am.
Oh, is it? Let's see. Oh, I forgot to change that. Admit all. Okay, I think I'll just make a change in the setting here. Okay, now everybody should be able to enter. Okay, guys, for the benefit of people who just entered the class, I will just take 2 minutes to explain. So we are in chapter number 34. Okay, and in chapter number 34, we are going to see Faraday's laws. Okay, induction. And basically how this old thought came, I'll explain. If you have, in chapter number 32, you have seen that if you have an area of uniform magnetic field, and if you take a loop, a current loop like this, and put it in the magnetic field, you've seen that this loop will experience a torque. The loop will turn. Okay. So turning is the effect of putting the current in the magnetic field, or turning is the torque is a consequence. So then people started wondering if the reverse will happen. That is, if you take a loop without any current, you take a loop, there is no current, okay, and then put it in a uniform magnetic field and you turn it. So torque is now the action, not the reaction. Okay, now you turn it. If you turn it, as a reaction, will a current be formed in the coil, in the loop? So this quest to find out whether this will happen led to Faraday's experiment 1 and 2. Okay, so quickly I'll explain what is Faraday's 1. In Faraday's 1, what happens is there is a loop, no source of EMF, so no current, okay, but there is an ammeter kept there. And what is done is a man gets a bar magnet with the north facing the loop, and he moves it with a velocity v and brings it towards the loop. So when he does that, there is a deflection in the ammeter, meaning there is a momentary current seen. It just deflects and comes back. So it's a momentary current. And then he finds that if he moves it faster, the current is larger. Then he finds that if he keeps it at rest, there is no current. Then he reverses the polarity and again does it. He finds that when he reverses the polarity, the direction of the deflection gets reversed. So these are all observations of the first experiment, but remember, no source of EMF in the loop. And that has been summarized in terms of these three pictures. So when he's bringing it with a velocity v, he sees a deflection to the right. Then when he holds it at rest, there is no deflection. When he pulls it back, he finds that there is a deflection in the opposite direction. Similarly, when he changes the polarity also, he will see these effects. Now go to experiment number 2. In experiment number 2, that loop that we had in the first experiment remains as it is. But then instead of a bar magnet, you're going to have a loop 2. I will call it loop 2. And what is there in the loop 2? Let us see. The loop 2 is having a source of EMF. Source of EMF means it is having a voltage source. So if it is having a voltage source, there is a key here. If you close the key, there will be a current in loop 2. Nothing surprising about it. Okay. And they are keeping the position. There is no motion in this case. The distance between loop 1 and loop 2 are kept fixed. Okay. Now let us see what all happens. Every time the key is closed, when the key is closed, there is going to be a current in the loop 2. And what is a loop of current going to create? A loop of current will create a magnetic field. It's a source of a magnetic field, you know it. So every time you close it, the current in the loop 2 becomes 0 to a maximum. 0 to a maximum. There is a jump. Or the magnetic field, you all know that B is directly proportional to current. Okay. So every time he's closing it, the current is jumping from 0 to maximum, or the magnetic field is jumping from 0 to a maximum. And every time he's doing that, there is a deflection in the ammeter. Okay. After that, no deflection. There is a current in loop 2, but nothing is happening in loop 1. Then every time he is opening the key, when he opens the key, what happens in loop 2? The current is jumping from a maximum to 0, or magnetic field is jumping from a maximum to 0, or there is a change in magnetic field in the opposite direction. And you're seeing a deflection in the ammeter in the opposite direction. Okay. And another thing that is noticed is that the magnitude of the deflection is independent of the value of current in the second loop. You may have a larger voltage source and have a large current in the loop 2, but then that is not at all affecting the deflection in loop 1. All that matters is opening and closing. Every time you open, there is a deflection. Every time you close it, there is a deflection. So it's momentary. Okay. And the direction of deflection when you open is opposite to the direction of deflection when you are closing. Okay. So now comes the naming ceremony. So what are we going to name? We are going to call the deflection in the ammeter. Ammeter is measuring current. The deflection, the momentary deflection that is seen in the ammeter is a result of a current called induced current. Why are you calling it induced? You're calling it induced because This current did not come because of an EMF source in that battery. There was no battery there. It didn't happen because of any battery. It happened simply because somebody moved a bar magnet or somebody opened and closed the key in loop 2. Okay, and you all know that for a current, there has to be an EMF. For a current, there has to be an EMF. So you conclude that this induced current is happening because of an induced EMF that has happened in loop 1. So somebody has induced an EMF in loop 1, and because of this induced EMF, there is an induced current in loop 1. Okay, so in the next slide, we are going to see what induced this EMF and the consequential EMF and the induced current. Okay, so once more, we summarize all the observations. A moving magnet or a changing current induces an EMF and a current in loop 1. Okay, so what do you infer from this observation? So the inference that you can make from this observation is time dependent or varying magnetic field can induce current in loop 1. When you are moving a magnet, okay, a bar magnet, you know that the magnetic field will be larger near the pole and smaller as you move away. So by actually moving the bar magnet, the magnetic field felt inside this loop area is changing. When you move it like this, when you pull it back, again it is decreasing. Similarly, when you have your southern at the south pole and when you're moving, you are increasing the magnetic field and decreasing the magnetic field, but the direction of the magnetic field is different in this case. Similarly, when you're closing the key in loop 2, you are actually increasing the current from 0 to a maximum, or the magnetic field is going from 0 to a maximum. Similarly, when you're opening the key, the current goes from a maximum to 0, or the magnetic field goes from a maximum to 0 in loop 2. Or whenever your loop 1 senses a change in magnetic field, then there is an induced EMF and an induced current. So that is your inference. Is this clear, guys? Yes or no?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So now let's go to observation 2. What is observation 2? Your observation 2 is that the induced current, that the amount of deflection that was happening with the ammeter depended on the speed of the change in, depended on the speed of the motion of the bar magnet. Okay, how much deflection was there and the direction of the deflection depended on the speed of the change in magnetic field. So from this, what do you induce? The inference that you can get from that is that the induced current is proportional. The induced current is proportional to the rate of change of magnetic field. Faster you change a magnetic field, larger will be the momentary current that you are able to see. Okay, and at the same time, you're also talking about an area. What is the area you're talking? You're talking about the area of the loop through which this magnetic field is changing as a function of time. Now we will introduce a term called magnetic flux. We will introduce a term called magnetic flux. Somebody's, can you mute your system, please? Yeah, thank you. So in Gauss law, you remember we studied something called electric flux. What was electric flux? Electric flux was integral E dot dA. Guys, the phone is still your. Please mute your system, please. Kindly mute. There is a background sound coming. Don't make me call you out. Kindly mute. Okay. Similarly, you can talk about something called the magnetic flux. Magnetic flux. So magnetic flux will be integral B dot dA. And here, when I'm talking of area, I'm talking about the area of the loop. Area of the loop. This is my area. Okay. So there is a flux change happening. And another thing is, if the magnetic field were to be uniform everywhere in the area, then this would have become B dot A. If B is uniform. Okay, but in general, take this. In general, take this. Okay, so when you are actually moving the bar magnet like this, the loop area, okay, the flux through the loop area is changing as a function of time. Okay, so you can simply now, instead of saying dB by dt, you can also bring in this area into picture, and you can say that I induced is, the current induced is proportional to d phi b by dt. So you conclude that whenever you are going to change the magnetic flux through any coil, then there will be an induced current. And I told you this is not a one-step process. You have to first say that there is going to be an induced EMF. There is an induced EMF which is proportional to d phi b by dt. And then because of this induced EMF, there is going to be a current there is an induced current in the loop, okay, which is equal to EMF induced is equal to current induced into the resistance of the coil, the resistance of the loop. That just comes from Ohm's law. That just comes from Ohm's law. Okay, so that means, first of all, because you're changing the magnetic flux through the loop area, there is an induced EMF. And this induced EMF is going to give an induced current in the loop. Okay, this is what is called your Faraday's law. This is called Faraday's law. And faster you're moving, larger is the change. Larger change, larger is your EMF. Larger is the induced current. Did you understand this, guys? Yes or no? Any doubt?
No, ma'am.
Okay, then let's just go ahead. The reason I had to take a special class was because it's a slightly difficult concept, so let me just do it a little slowly, I thought. So magnetic flux, which I have discussed in the previous page, I am discussing here. Magnetic flux is a measure of, in electric flux also we have seen, flux can be simply pictorially measured as the number of field lines cutting through the given surface. Flux can be defined as, you can write mathematically as integral B dot dA, but then pictorially you can denote it by the number of field lines cutting through the area. Okay. So what you do here is, first of all, let us finish off this magnetic flux. Magnetic flux is integral B dot dA. What will be the unit? B is Tesla, area is meter square. So Tesla meter square or Weber. Weber is going to be the unit of magnetic flux. And then because there is a dot product involved, you know that flux is a vector scalar quantity, and it is given by integral, I've got an integral here, integral B dA cos theta. What is cos theta? Cos theta, if my area vector at this place is this, then my B vector is going to be this, then theta is going to be the angle between B and dA vector. Okay, now putting together all that we have discussed from the beginning of this class, we will arrive at one sentence called the Faraday's law of induction. So what does Faraday's law of induction says? It says that the magnitude of the induced EMF in a circuit is equal to the rate at which the magnetic flux through the circuit is changing with time. Okay, the magnitude of the EMF induced in a loop is equal to the rate at which the magnetic flux is changing through this loop. So this is called Faraday's law of induction. And when you write it mathematically, you will write it as magnitude, I'm not talking of direction, magnitude of the induced EMF is equal to the rate of change of magnetic flux, or d phi b by dt. Okay, now instead of, we had one turn of the loop, that loop one. Instead, if we have n number of turns, if you have n number of turns, then the induced EMF is going to be n times the flux change through, the rate of change of flux through one turning. So n into d phi b by dt. Okay, so that's your final equation for induced EMF. So if I say that my loop has got a resistance R, and if I say that there is a current I induced, then there is a relationship between all of them. I can say that induced EMF is going to be equal to, by Ohm's law, I'm repeating what I said some time back. So it is I induced into the resistance of the loop, that's going to be equal to N times d phi b by dt. This is finally the equation representing your Faraday's law of induction. I hope you understand why it's called law of induction, because something outside is inducing this effect in this loop. Now, I don't know how much you are able to really understand how the flux is changing, how the flux has changed. Once more, I'll repeat that part. If I have my bar magnet, I know that the magnetic fields will be closer near the pole and then farther away from the pole. So think of this loop. Think of this loop. When this loop is here, the number of lines cutting through the loop is less. Okay? But then when the bar magnet comes close, now what happens is the same area you see, more number of lines are cutting. So now you're understanding that how the flux is increasing as a function of time when you get it closer. Similarly, when you pull it away, the number of lines cutting through the area decreases, or there is a decrease in the flux as a function of time. So this is the way you have to understand the concept of flux change. Flux, you have to remember, is the number of lines represented by the number of lines cutting through the area. So when you're pulling the source away, less number of lines are cutting. When you're bringing it closer, more number of lines are cutting. So you have to also understand the concept of increase as a function of time and decrease as a function of time. Increase as a function of time, let's call it plus, and decrease as a function of time, let's call it minus. Okay, so now to find out whether you understood the concept of flux, let's just try this problem. These are very simple things that can be even given in a MCQ. So here is an area. Area need not be a closed surface, please. Unlike Gauss law, it has to be a closed surface. Here it need not be closed, it can be an open surface. So here is an area. Let the area be 2.5 meters square. Area is a vector, you know. Area is a vector and the vector direction will be normal to the surface. So let's say this is my area vector direction. This is my area vector. Okay. And there is a uniform magnetic field. Look at the magnetic field. The magnetic field is making an angle 57 here. It's making an angle 57. Now you can see that D and area vector will be making an angle 57 degrees. Okay. So now find the flux through this area. So what do? Because the magnetic field is uniform, integral B dot dA will simply become B dot A. It will simply become B dot A. I will explain why it is so. It is because B is going to be the same everywhere. So you can take that B out of the integral and then do your integral dA. Okay, so that's going to be B dot A. And B dot A is BA cos theta. So let's put everything together. So 42 micro Tesla. So 42 into 10 to the power of minus 6 into area is 2.5 meters square and cos of, what is it? Cos of 57 degrees. So you can actually pull out a calculator, do it, and you will get your answer in Weber. Okay, so please use your calculator when you're coming for the online examinations. Okay, So now let's try another problem. So let's try another problem. So here, you have a long solenoid. What is a solenoid used for? I've told you. Solenoid is used to make a uniform magnetic field. It's a source of a uniform magnetic field. So here it is B. And how do I know the direction of B? From the right hand rule. I know that there is a magnetic field B. Okay. This long solenoid, yes, this is the one. Okay. This long solenoid, yes, is having 220 turns per centimeter. 220 turns per centimeter. So that means N equal to 220 divided by, but you should write it in SI units. So 220 turns divided by 10 to the power of minus 2 meter. Or this becomes 22000 turns per meter. So that is N. Okay. And it has got a diameter D equal to 3.2 centimeter. At its center, we place a 130 turn closed pack coil. So here we are placing a coil inside the magnetic field, and the diameter of this is obviously a smaller one and having a diameter 2.1 centimeter. And this current in the solenoid is going to change. Initially, the current is 0 and you are changing it to 1.5 ampere. Okay, at a steady rate. At a steady rate. And you are doing this in a time interval t equal to 0.16 second. So by changing a current in that big solenoid from 0 to 1.5 amperes in a time 0.16 second, what are we actually doing? Anyone? What is the big solenoid doing? The big solenoid is providing a magnetic field mu naught small n I. Okay? And you are going to change this current. You're changing this current. By changing this current, what are you actually doing? You're actually changing the magnetic field. Okay? So what is a magnetic field? Let us say it is dB by dt. dB by dt equal to mu naught n di by dt. di by dt. Okay? And what is this di by dt? I can write it as mu naught n delta I by delta t. What is delta I? Delta I is going to be 1.5 is final minus 0. That is 1.5. So delta I is 1.5. It is happening in a time delta t equal to 0.16 second. You can put that here. And then of course your n is 22,000. Put that also. Mu naught you know is 4 pi into 10 to the power of minus 7. This is if it is one turn. This is if it is one turn. But then I have n turns. I have n number of, I'm sorry, let's keep it as it is. It's dB by dt. It is dB, that n we have to take only for the second coil. Okay. So it is dB by dt. But I want not dB by dt. I'm interested in d phi b by dt. d phi b by dt. So what I'll do here is, I will consider the area. I will have to consider the area. So the magnetic field is going like this through this tiny loop. I have to consider the area of this tiny loop. What is the area of the tiny loop? It is going to be pi dc by 2 whole square. That is the area of the tiny loop. And let me take my area vector like this. Okay. This is my B, this is my area vector, and it has got n turns. N turns. Therefore, my d phi b by dt will become n into a into b. What is my b? B is mu naught small n delta, or let me write delta I by delta t. I don't know how many of you followed this step, guys. Okay. So first thing is, this big solenoid is giving rise to a magnetic field. That magnetic field is produced because of a current I. So what is the general formula for that magnetic field? The general formula is mu naught small n I. Small n I found out from 2200 divided by the length. Length is 1 centimeter. Per centimeter, 2200. Therefore, per meter, n is 22,000. Then, what is happening to the current? The current is not a constant. The current is changing from 0 to 1.5 in a time 0.16 seconds. That means my magnetic field is also changing as a function of time, and it is mu naught n di by dt or mu naught n delta I by delta t. Okay. Now, I don't want change in magnetic field alone. I want the change in flux. So what do? I just have to do a dot product with A, the area. Which area should I take? I have to take the area of that small loop, because there is going to be an induced current in that small loop, in the loop, the coil C. Coil C is not having any source of EMF. Coil C is going to get an induced current because the flux through it is changing. So I have to consider that area. Okay, and what is that area? That area is pi dc by 2 whole square, where dc is the diameter of that tiny coil, which is 2.1 centimeter. Convert it into meter. Okay, so this is the change in flux. But what is my Faraday's law saying? Faraday's law says that the rate of change of flux is actually going to be equal to, it's going to be equal to the EMF induced. Therefore, EMF induced is equal to d phi b by dt equal to NA mu naught n delta I by delta t. Now, one thing that you should remember is that B is parallel to the area vector. So B dot A is simply BA. Okay, so this is the way this problem has been done. So now you see, this is exactly what he has done. EMF is equal to N into d phi B by dt. N is the number of turns, and each turn of that coil C is going to have a flux A into delta B by delta T, which is mu naught N delta I by delta T. Or take all the constants out, N A mu naught small n delta I by delta T. Okay, so you should not have confusion about which area you have to take. You have to take the area. You have to take the area of the coil in which you are going to find the induced EMF. Okay, then you will ask a question, why the hell did this fellow give this other D? Why did he give the other D? He gave the other D for you to simply know that that is a bigger solenoid into which your tiny coil is able to sit. And where is it sitting? It is sitting at the center. So that means it is going to experience a uniform magnetic field, not a constant magnetic field, a uniform magnetic field. Why is the concept of uniform important there? It is important because you don't have to do integral B dot dA. B dot dA, integral B dot dA is simply B dot A. That's the reason why he had to do all these things. Okay, so now put all the numericals into that, the numbers into it, you will get your answer in volt. EMF is having a unit voltage. So you will get it in volts. So I'll stop here. I know it's been a pretty difficult concept. That's the reason why I took this special class. Next class, what we are going to see is in which direction this induced current will be there. Is it clockwise? Is it anti-clockwise? So answer to that is going to be given by Lenz's law. Okay, so we stop here. So tomorrow we will start with Lenz's law. Kindly go through this and then enter the class. Only then the continuity will be there. So with this, I am winding up. You can leave.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you.